Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Imagine becoming a recognizable face on national television, known for a glamorous lifestyle that millions of viewers found both fascinating and controversial. Then, just a few years after the cameras stopped rolling, your name would appear in headlines for a completely different reason, one involving a brutal homicide that shocked fans and forever changed countless lives. That is exactly what happened to Ash Armand, whose birth name is Akshaya Kubiak. Armand rose to fame on Showtime's reality series Gigolos, a show that followed the lives of male escorts working in Las Vegas. On screen, he cultivated an image of a calm, spiritual, and self-disciplined man. But in July 2020, that public persona came crashing down. According to court records, Ash Armand later pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and mayhem in connection with the death of his friend, 29-year-old Herleen Dulai. The case began after a violent encounter inside Armand's Las Vegas home. Investigators determined that Dulai died from blunt force trauma, with strangulation also contributing to her death. Armand told investigators that he and Dulai had taken psychedelic mushrooms together before the incident. He claimed that she attacked him first and that he blacked out during the struggle. But when emergency responders arrived after his 911 call, they found Herleen Dulai unresponsive. Officers at the scene reported that she was already obviously deceased, and the evidence inside the home pointed to an exceptionally violent confrontation. In the end, the criminal case concluded with Armand accepting responsibility through a guilty plea rather than taking the case to trial. He was sentenced to serve between 8 and 20 years in a Nevada state prison. But one question still lingers. How did a reality TV personality known as the show's Zen Master become the central figure in one of Las Vegas's most disturbing true crime cases? That answer begins years before the fatal night of July 2020. Before we uncover what really happened, if you enjoy well-researched true crime documentaries based on verified facts and court records, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation. As the case moved through the court system, Ash Armand expressed remorse for what had happened. During his sentencing hearing in December 2021, he addressed the court and said, "I have never hit a woman in my life, and I certainly never wanted to hurt Herleen." Those were his own words as he stood before the judge, facing the consequences of the fatal encounter. However, despite his statement, the court had already considered the evidence, and his guilty plea to voluntary manslaughter and mayhem meant he accepted criminal responsibility for Herleen Dulai's death. The case continued to attract public attention long after the sentencing. In March 2025, Paramount Plus released the documentary series Sin City Gigolo, which revisited both the controversial reality show and the tragic crime that became permanently linked to one of its former stars. Rather than focusing only on the homicide investigation, the series also featured interviews with former cast members and crew, offering their personal memories and perspectives about Armand before everything changed. To many viewers, the story raised an unsettling question. How did someone who appeared calm, thoughtful, and spiritually grounded become involved in such a violent crime? Long before the headlines, Ash Armand had built a very different public image. He joined Showtime's Gigolos during its third season and quickly earned the nickname the Zen Master. On camera, he presented himself as someone who emphasized mindfulness, fitness, and emotional balance, making him stand out from the rest of the cast. That peaceful reputation extended beyond television. Supporters who believed in his character described him as a gentle healer, sensitive teacher, and generous friend on a fundraising page created to help pay for his legal defense. Those descriptions reflected how many people who knew him before the crime viewed him, creating a sharp contrast with the allegations that eventually led to his conviction. According to reports, Armand spent parts of his childhood in both Maine and Japan, growing up alongside his two siblings. In a letter submitted to the court, his mother wrote that from an early age, Akshaya was immersed in both Eastern and Western healing traditions and philosophies. She portrayed him as someone raised with values centered on compassion, personal growth, and spirituality. Yet as investigators pieced together the events of July 2020, many were left wondering how a man with that background and a public image built around peace and self-control could become the central figure in a homicide case that stunned Las Vegas and captivated true crime audiences across the country. As more details about Ash Armand's life emerged after his arrest, people began looking beyond the crime itself, trying to understand the path that had brought him to national television and, ultimately, to a Nevada courtroom. Barbara Shearer, the director of the 2025 Paramount Plus documentary Sin City Gigolo, described Armand's upbringing as highly unconventional. In an interview with TV Insider, she said he was raised in an environment that was very open when it came to sexuality. In her view, that background may have made the transition into the adult entertainment industry feel natural to him rather than shocking or unexpected. Exactly when Armand entered the escort business isn't publicly documented. However, reports indicate that in 2012, he joined Cowboys 4 Angels, a Las Vegas-based male companion agency founded by Garen James. That same year, James helped Armand secure a role on Showtime's reality series Gigolos, a program that followed the lives of several male escorts working in Las Vegas. For the next 4 years, millions of viewers watched Armand on television. While the show generated controversy because of its subject matter, it also gave him national exposure and helped shape the calm, spiritual image that many fans associated with him. He remained part of the cast until the series ended in 2016. Away from television, Armand described himself on social media as a sex and fitness educator. He also identified himself as a father. According to reporting by Refinery29, his teenage son was 17 years old when Armand was arrested in 2020, meaning the criminal case affected not only the victim's family, but also Armand's own loved ones. One of the most important people in this story was Herleen Dulai. She wasn't a stranger who had just met Armand that night. The two knew each other before the fatal incident and had developed a friendship over time. Some reports have raised questions about whether Dulai had ever been one of Armand's clients. However, accounts on that point conflict, and no clear public record has definitively answered that question. What is confirmed is that the two were close enough to begin working on a business venture together. According to the Las Vegas Review-Journal, they had started a business partnership before her death, although the exact nature of that business has never been publicly explained. That existing friendship makes the events of the 16th of July 2020 even more tragic. What began as time spent together between two people who knew and trusted each other would end with one person dead, the other facing homicide charges, and a case that continues to draw attention years later. Before becoming the victim in a case that would make national headlines, Herleen Dulai was known by her family and friends for the positive impact she had on the people around her. According to her obituary, Dulai was born in Northern California and later graduated from Temple University in Pennsylvania. After moving to Las Vegas, she became actively involved in her community. She led a local youth group, enjoyed mentoring young people, and was passionate about helping others. By the summer of 2020, she was working as a personal trainer, encouraging clients to live healthier lives, both physically and mentally. The words written by her loved ones paint a picture far different from the tragedy that would later define the headlines. Her obituary described her as someone who touched every soul she came into contact with and left a sparkle. Family and friends remembered her for her warm smile, contagious laughter, and the comforting hugs she gave so freely. To those who knew her best, she wasn't just another name in a true crime story. She was a daughter, a friend, a mentor, and someone whose life was cut tragically short at just 29 years old. The final chapter of Herleen's life began on the evening of the 15th of July 2020. According to the investigation, she went to Ash Armand's home in Las Vegas. The two, who had been friends, reportedly spent the evening together in what initially appeared to be a peaceful setting. Reports indicate they consumed psychedelic mushrooms, lit candles, prayed together, and watched the movie Avatar. At first glance, nothing about the evening suggested it would end in violence. But sometime during the night, or early the next morning, something went terribly wrong. At approximately 10 a.m. on the 16th of July 2020, Ash Armand called 911. During that emergency call, he made a statement that investigators and later the public would never forget. It is going to sound insane because it is insane. There was a struggle. I temporarily lost my mind. Those words immediately signaled that this was far more than a routine medical emergency. As instructed by the 911 dispatcher, Armand attempted to perform CPR while waiting for emergency crews to arrive. He reportedly told responders that Herleen had suffered a heart attack. However, when paramedics and police entered the home, they quickly realized the situation did not match that explanation. According to investigators, there were no obvious signs of a heart attack. Instead, first responders found evidence of a violent assault. Herleen Dulai had suffered severe physical injuries, and blood was reportedly spattered throughout parts of the room. The scene immediately shifted the investigation from a possible medical emergency to what authorities believed was a violent crime. Before we continue with the investigation and uncover what detectives discovered next, if you're finding this documentary informative, please take a moment to like this video. It really helps us bring more well-researched, true crime stories based on verified facts and court records. Now, let's continue. In a matter of hours, what had begun as an evening between two friends had transformed into a homicide investigation that would forever change both families and leave investigators searching for answers about what had happened inside that Las Vegas home. As investigators continued processing the crime scene, another statement attributed to Ash Armand would become a significant part of the case. According to the grand jury indictment, Armand told paramedics, "When the police get here, I'll surrender." That statement came while emergency personnel were still inside the home trying to understand exactly what had happened. By that point, it was already clear that Herleen Dulai could not be saved. The investigation that followed painted a grim picture. During the autopsy, the Clark County Coroner's Office documented evidence of extreme physical violence. Medical examiners concluded that Herleen Dulai died from blunt force trauma, with strangulation listed as a contributing factor. Based on those findings, the coroner officially ruled her death a homicide, confirming that it resulted from another person's actions rather than natural causes or an accident. Following the investigation, prosecutors charged Ash Armand with murder. As the criminal case moved through the Nevada court system, Armand offered his explanation for what happened. He claimed that after the two had taken psychedelic mushrooms, Herleen attacked him first, and that he responded during what he described as a temporary loss of control. His account centered on the idea that he had blacked out during the struggle. However, Herleen Dulai's family strongly rejected that explanation. During the court proceedings, her loved ones questioned whether any alleged confrontation could possibly justify the level of violence documented by investigators and medical examiners. Their statements reflected the profound loss they had suffered, and their belief that the injuries Herleen sustained were impossible to reconcile with Armand's version of events. Rather than taking the case through a lengthy jury trial, Armand ultimately chose to resolve it through a plea agreement. In September 2021, he pleaded guilty to the felony charges of voluntary manslaughter and mayhem. According to reports presented in court, one reason for the plea agreement was to spare Herleen Dulai's family from reliving the evidence and testimony during a full trial. A few months later, in December 2021, the judge handed down the sentence. Ash Armand was ordered to serve between 8 and 20 years in Nevada State Prison. The sentence brought the criminal case to its legal conclusion, but for Herleen Dulai's family and friends, it could never undo the loss of a woman remembered for her kindness, compassion, and the positive impact she had on those around her. Although the courtroom proceedings had ended, the story itself would continue to draw national attention, raising new questions about Armand's past, the controversial television show that made him famous, and the life he now lives behind prison walls. Long before Ash Armand became the focus of a homicide case, the television show that made him famous had already been surrounded by controversy. Showtime's Gigolos aired for 6 seasons, following the lives of several male escorts working in Las Vegas. The series attracted viewers because it offered an inside look at an industry that is rarely shown on mainstream television. But while the show gained a loyal audience, it also sparked ongoing debates about whether the activities being portrayed were actually legal. The series came to an end in 2016, although no official reason for its cancellation has ever been publicly confirmed. One of the biggest points of controversy involved Nevada's prostitution laws, which are often misunderstood. Many people assume prostitution is legal throughout the entire state of Nevada, but that's not the case. Under Nevada law, prostitution is permitted only in licensed brothels located in certain counties that allow them. It is not legal in Las Vegas or Clark County, where Gigolos was filmed and where Ash Armand lived. That legal distinction led to years of public criticism surrounding the show. The men featured on Gigolos described themselves as providing companion services, arguing that clients paid for their time rather than for sexual activity itself. However, law enforcement officials questioned whether that distinction changed the legal reality. In a 2011 interview with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department spokesman Marcus Martin said that, in the department's view, simply changing the wording did not make the conduct legal. He stated that although the cast members referred to themselves as companions and structured their business in a particular way, authorities still considered those activities to be in violation of Nevada law if they involved prostitution outside a licensed brothel. At the same time, Martin explained why arrests were not being made based solely on what viewers saw on television. According to him, because the transactions shown on the program occurred on camera, rather than being directly witnessed by police officers as criminal acts, they generally did not provide the basis for immediate arrests. It's important to note that these legal debates surrounding the television series were separate from the homicide case involving Herleen Dulai. The controversy over Gigolos may have shaped public perception of the show's cast, but Ash Armand's conviction stemmed from the events of July 2020, years after the series had already ended. For many viewers, however, the contrast was impossible to ignore. A man once introduced to audiences as the show's calm and spiritual Zen master was no longer remembered but for a violent crime that permanently overshadowed his time in the spotlight. Today, Ash Armand remains incarcerated in a Nevada state correctional facility, where he has been serving his prison sentence since 2021. Under the terms of the court's judgment, he was sentenced to 8 to 20 years after pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter and mayhem in connection with the death of Herleen Dulai. Exactly when he may become eligible for release depends on Nevada's correctional and parole process. Even while he was behind bars, interest in the case continued to grow. In March 2025, Paramount Plus released the documentary series Sin City Gigolo, which revisited both the reality show and the tragic events that followed. Director Barbara Shearer said she hoped to interview Armand directly for the project, believing his perspective would be an important part of telling the complete story. However, that interview never happened. According to Shearer, prison restrictions prevented the production team from bringing cameras into the correctional facility. As a result, the documentary relied on interviews with former cast members, crew members, and others connected to the case. Although Armand never appeared on camera, Shearer said the filmmakers worked to ensure that his role and influence remained central to the documentary's narrative. Then, another development unexpectedly placed Armand's name back in national headlines. In May 2025, during the federal criminal trial of music producer Sean Diddy Combs in Manhattan, Armand's name surfaced during witness testimony. According to reporting by People, prosecutors identified him as one of several escorts who were alleged to have participated in events that prosecutors described as freak-offs, which they characterized in court as elaborate and organized sexual performances. It's important to emphasize that this was a separate matter from the Herleen Dulai homicide case. Armand was mentioned during testimony in the Combs trial, and the reporting described his alleged involvement in those events. The article does not state that he was charged or convicted in connection with those allegations. For many people, however, the mention served as another reminder of how far Armand's life had drifted from the image he once projected on television. He had entered the public eye as a reality TV personality known for presenting himself as calm, spiritual, and disciplined. Years later, his legacy had become defined not by fame or entertainment, but by a violent crime that ended the life of a 29-year-old woman and left two families forever changed. The story of Ash Armand is more than the downfall of a reality television star. It is a true crime case that highlights how quickly public success can unravel, how one night can alter countless lives, and how the consequences of violence continue long after a courtroom reaches its final verdict. If you found this documentary informative, please take a moment to like this video, share it with fellow true crime fans, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth investigations based on verified facts and court records. Your support helps us continue bringing carefully researched stories to this channel every week. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next investigation. If you found this documentary informative, please take a moment to like this video, share it with fellow true crime fans, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth investigations based on verified facts and court records. Your support helps us continue bringing carefully researched stories to this channel every week. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next investigation.